Hey, what's up? This is Andy Bernard here. It feels like people are more willing than ever before to express themselves through how they look. It doesn't take much scrolling to see so much aesthetic diversity and examples of what can look good. So isn't it weird that some of the most important accessories to our lives, the things that we carry around with us every day, all pretty much look the same? Why can bags look like this, this, or this, but when it comes to picking something like a phone or a laptop, it's like, wow, which one of these best represents my unique personality and use case? There are so many ridiculous fashion collabs out there, so many products designed for incredibly niche uses, and current gen tech is just so similar, functionally and aesthetically. I think it's time for tech products as fashion items and objects of self-expression to make a bit of a comeback. So let's talk through why some of those items in the past represented us so well, why things now deserve to have more personality, and a new collaboration which might just help solve that problem. In 2003, Louis Vuitton made an ultra-portable laptop designed to imitate a purse or mini bag, complete with their signature checkered canvas on the outside and tonal interior. What a great way of a tech item effectively becoming part of a luxury wardrobe and becoming an authentic part of the Louis Vuitton ecosystem by literally reshaping the conventional laptop form factor into a Louis Vuitton form factor. Unfortunately, these were pretty rare, commemorating 25 years of their first Japanese store opening, but there is one on eBay if you've got $750 to spare and you don't mind the 300 MHz processor. In some respect, it's actually a really good thing that the best tech isn't gated behind luxury goods. Everywhere you look, the best items in a particular category are insane over-the-top products designed exclusively for the ultra-rich. Regular people will probably never experience them. But have you ever thought about how us normies essentially have the same access to smart devices as literal billionaires? If you own a current generation flagship smartphone, you interact with the digital world fundamentally in exactly the same way as Kendall Jenner or Elon Musk or whatever. There's something slightly reassuring about that something so integral to everyone's lives is surprisingly democratized across society. But let's return to the problem. If you care about fashion or aesthetics and design generally, you don't really have that many options. Phones which present a unique functional or aesthetic concept are few and far between, laptops even less so. Okay, you can get fun cases like this Maharishi Casetify one, but they don't fundamentally change your experience with the phone at all. Unless you count running your fingers over the Rick Owens debossing to be a fundamental experience change. There's no doubt this has gotten worse over time. That Louis Vuitton laptop is 20 years old now, and I kind of miss the dawn of the internet-enabled smartphone where there was absolutely no standardization. Every single phone was completely different, not just aesthetically, but in terms of functionality and focus as well. I had a Sony Ericsson Music phone at one point, which had dedicated play and pause keys and forward and back and stuff, and some built-in music production software where you can make some fire beats. But as soon as you get something like that out, people think, oh, this guy likes his tunes. The point is, these devices were super personal choices, and they say a lot about you, who you are, the kind of thing you like doing, the way you want to present yourself. In that sense, they are as much a fashion accessory as the clothing you're wearing. You owned an N-Gage not just to play games on your phone, but to communicate, I'm a capital G gamer, every second that you're holding it. Judging by the content we see online, more and more people feel very comfortable expressing themselves in all kinds of different ways. So it's kind of sad that we lost this particular means of self-expression. And while with fashion we can go back to vintage and archival stuff if we don't like the current offering, the progression of tech makes that pretty much impossible. Good luck getting your favorite game to run on that Louis Vuitton laptop, provided the 20-year-old battery doesn't burst into flames first. I'd argue that now people are even kind of resistant to the idea of paying more for unique product design and aesthetics when it comes to tech, which is weird because it's so normalized to pay extra for unique aesthetics and product design when it comes to every other aspect of fashion. Why wouldn't you want the thing you hold and interact with every day to look cool and interesting as well as be functional? Could it be time for highly specialized or aesthetically differentiated tech to make a bit of a comeback though, and shed people's misconception that form and function can't coexist? Maybe, for a couple of reasons. I think a lot of people are struggling to get too excited about the phone and laptop launches these days. It feels like many of the big announcements go like, from the millions of passionate fans worldwide, we hear you. And that's why for this year, we've made number go up. Anything taking a different approach naturally gains a lot of extra attention. That's why the Nothing phone got such a buzz around it, despite the spec being fairly standard. Second, nostalgia for those kinds of devices we covered earlier is really at an all-time high. That's partly because of the enduring Y2K trend, but I think people like the idea of having that physical or more tactile interaction with their tech. It's almost an act of rebellion from mainstream devices and a bit of an extension of the trend towards film photography and vinyl and other sorts of analog formats. Thirdly, and in a more general sense, I think people are just more keen on expressing themselves than ever before, and naturally that extends to the kinds of devices that we use and interact with on a daily basis. Or, to be more cynical, in an increasingly online world where attention is the most valuable currency, people like the idea of having an extra thing that can help achieve that. The more unusual stuff you can present as part of your content, the better. It's another thing for people to notice. I find myself agreeing to some extent with all of those things, and that's why I found the 2020 ROG and Acronym laptop collaboration particularly interesting. It had this cohesive design philosophy surrounding the device as an industrial tool for creative people, combined with an aesthetic all its own which really expresses the interests of the user and reflects the Acronym brand. We reviewed that at launch, even interviewing Errolson as part of that collaboration, which remains one of the high points of this channel. At the time, it was described as the first step of collaboration between the two brands, and after approximately 3 years of relative silence, we finally have a new device, the RMT02. And with big thanks to ROG and Acronym for sending this over, we have one right here to take a look at. Is this the kind of device people want to see, a return to tech as an item of self-expression, just like the clothing we wear? Something designed not just as a general purpose device, but with a specific type of person in mind. Let's take a closer look at this thing. It's based on the ROG FLOW Z13, a gaming hybrid laptop tablet device. Don't let that fool you into thinking this is for feeding microtransactions into Clash of Clans though, because not only does this use a proper Windows OS, but the spec is pretty ridiculous as well. 13th Gen i9, 32GB of RAM, 1TB SSD, RTX 4070 in there, and a 100% DCI P3 validated 1440p 165Hz screen. It's a pretty impressive combination, particularly when jammed into something this small and portable. I don't want to turn this into a whole tech review. I'm sure other people will cover the performance benchmarks and that side of things, but needless to say, I used this recently for both gaming and content creation. It did an excellent job of both of those things, and I took it away snowboarding, where the power and portability definitely did come in handy. And as we dive into whether this represents a renaissance of individualized tech, it is worth remembering the spec of this device. This is not compromised in any way. You are not trading function for form, but you are adding form to function. You only need to look at this versus the regular version for about a second to notice how the machined aluminium chassis presents a very non-standard directional aesthetic. This catches the light like no other laptop. It makes you look at it, and it looks far more like an industrial piece of aerospace tech than anything else. Up close, multi-level CNC milled shapes, graphics, and this raw finish are industrial, technical, but also have an inscrutable quality which makes the viewer want to investigate it and understand what everything is, in stark contrast with mainstream tech which minimizes design flourishes and prioritizes ease of visual recognition. I got the chance to speak to graphic designer and art director of the project, Raf Rennie, who said that they wanted to have that feeling of exploration and excitement, which you really feel as you unbox everything for the first time. Personality runs through every conceivable part: the tablet, keyboard, charger, stylus, and packaging. Every angle of every piece has something about it separating it from the standard version. I do want to draw attention to the additional font on here used throughout as well. This is Raf's update to a font called New Alphabet, created in the late 60s as a revolutionary and controversial concept for an alternative lettering system with no diagonals to be more legible on early CRT screens. There's a surface level connection to retro futuristic style and pre-digital tech, the kind of thing which people are currently kind of nostalgic for. But Raf told me he used it to reference a kind of symbiotic or even parasitic relationship we have with our computers. The original font was an experiment of adapting our language and alphabet to better suit computers, instead of waiting for computers to be able to better understand our language. I think that's a very relevant thing to explore at a time where we are consuming products and having experiences because of how they can be communicated online, i.e. we are changing our real world behavior to better suit the digital digital world. I also see it as a reference to creative or design-led problem solving. This is almost saying, we built this device for people with this kind of mindset, or at least people who appreciate the thought process which led to New Alphabet's creation. The small selection of transparent keys alongside the classic gaming ones is further evidence of that idea. I saw the highlighting of the undo command and escape button as an admission that this is for the creative perfectionist who's not afraid to undo their work in order to iterate and make something even better. I asked Raf, who said almost exactly that. He says Control Z Escape are for creatives, always undoing and trying to get out of frozen programs. I also named the Z key past, since you're returning to a past state when you use Control Z. Raf kept the contrast WASD, because everyone needs some time to game and chill occasionally, right? The friends and family version uses a bold color scheme inspired by the console in Alien, but the retail version which we've got here is a little bit more muted and taken from Raf's photos when he was out hiking of moss and lichen. They both fit the acronym aesthetic and ground the product in something natural. That's quite a nice touch, and I'd certainly like to see that kind of approach applied to an entire device. ROG Gorp Core compostable phone coming in 2024. The overall impression is of slight mystery, which will encourage some people to take a closer look, to infer meaning from some of these details, and engage with more of those tactile qualities absent in other devices. I love them all. They look great, they're interesting, they differentiate the device, but they don't fundamentally change the way you interact with it. And that is where this comes in. Locking these pins to the chassis lets you carry the device messenger style for easy transport, briefcase style for quick repositioning, and a third hands-free use method they call producer mode. Clearly Acronym imagined the user sketching something out on the go, or controlling a DJ set or something whilst being part of the crowd. It's the clearest indication this is about form and function intertwined, and the perfect link to the Acronym ecosystem. This strap is a direct reference or reinterpretation of the straps that they use on their bags like the 3A1, making it functionally and aesthetically familiar, turning the RMT02 into an accessory and behaving just like one of their bags would. This interacts with the interops functionality on their jackets as well, showing its value to someone already invested in the brand, and access to Acronym's signature look to a new audience. The design details show individuality of the form, but this shows how the laptop's form is partly derived from its unique function. The ruggedized corners key to this laptop's design are both, aesthetic touches. They're there because they look cool, but they are also the anchoring points for this essential piece of functionality. The most dedicated Acronym followers might know the 3A11TS from 2010, which carried an iPad in a similar manner, but this evolves that idea by providing a direct interface with the laptop itself. What Raf said about carrying the laptop in this way I thought was quite insightful. He said, "I was interested in creating something that takes on its own identity. Being a huge fan of science fiction and anime, I was interested in how the RMT02 could become its own agent, as say the Dominators do in Psycho Pass, or the way cell phones do in animes like Eden of the East, Future Diary, Terror in Resonance." Even if you're not an Acronym cult member, it's easy to appreciate the identity of this when it's latched on to someone's side. And returning to those ideas of humanity and tech, I think this is a really great example of just how close technology has become to our lives. Having it in a bag is too disconnected. It needs to be literally at my side, in my hand, around my neck. And while I don't think this is the intention, it has a little bit of hyperreal DNA in here as well. These kinds of extra pieces of functionality make for great flashy short form video content. It's a great way of getting someone's attention spinning a $2,500 pretty smashable device around in a circle. Collectively, a lot differentiates this device, and even now I've glossed over a few features like the custom air pack, the custom stylus, the recycled packaging, and the bag for carrying the charger, which might be basic relative to a 3A2, but is still substantial enough to be a legitimate fashion accessory by itself. Just like the USB necklace of the RMT01. Collectively, this obsessive attention to detail and sheer volume of changes versus the standard version says a lot about who Acronym and ROG see as a user of this kind of device. In my eyes, the RMT02 owner is a digital nomad who works on the move, is a multidisciplinary creative, producing music, editing video, sketching out ideas, even photographing things which inspire them, and then bringing all those things to life. And of course, chilling with their favorite game in some downtime. I imagine there's at least a bit of crossover with the typical Acronym clothing consumer. Regardless of how many people actually fit this mold, I have no doubt that people out there feel that a device like this represents them better than a standard product would, particularly because you can literally walk around wearing it. But when something is approached and created in this fundamentally different way to that standard, not everyone is going to understand or appreciate it. The reactions from mainstream tech and gaming fans have been mixed. Even some reviewers fail to see what makes this interesting, glossing over or just not really covering essential parts of what separates this from the pack.
But what do you reckon? Would you be tempted to buy something like this? Or do you think perhaps it's a bit of a gimmicky design? Let me know what you make of the Flow Z13 in the comments below.
Raf told me this though, that he wanted to show we can still make interesting and challenging things, or can have proudly aesthetic things without worrying about where it fits into a pre-existing ecosystem. By nature, not everyone will like the result of that, but for people who do, this represents an opportunity to reclaim tech and fashion, form and function together in one device. I don't expect this will start a trend of Rick Owens AirPods and Arc'teryx smartwatches. The fact that Raf and the team worked for 2 years on this suggests that it is not a quick and easy cash grab, but is ultimately successful at what it sets out to achieve. It's something that references our need to have the digital world as our constant companion, but also toes the line between fun, flashy features easy to show off in a viral video and small, considered details unveiled in a more personal, tactile way. The creativity running through this device I've personally found has inspired me to make content around it and was the jumping off point for the topic of this video. Does this concept interest you though? Should we embrace a renaissance of fashion and tech? Or is it too exhausting to have to think about whether your laptop goes with your outfit? Or do you subscribe to the idea that you should only be paying for functionality, features and performance when it comes to a device like this, and the aesthetics or the design side of things, or even this kind of functionality which combines form, is not really something you're interested in? I'd love to hear where you stand on this and your thoughts on the RMT02. It very much is a unique device, and again I have to thank ROG and Acronym for sending this over, and a massive thanks to Raf as well for taking the time to give some really detailed and thoughtful answers into some of the questions that I asked. Even with the length of this video, I feel like there were other things I could have talked about more with this laptop. There really is so much to say, but I really hope you enjoyed this tour around it. Would love to know what you think. If you enjoyed it, please do give the video a like. It massively helps out, and thanks again so much for the support on the recent content. Last video really was popping off and you guys had some really kind things to say, so thank you so much there. And of course, we will be back very soon with another one.